My first sentence I ever said, I could see my dad in the rearview mirror, and I go, yep, that's my daddy.
Oh, that's
First
beautiful.
sentence.
I say to him, well, Dad, I think you did a really poor job with me.
Wow. Welcome, woven ones. This is Generations Woven, where the voices of 3 generations blend into one tapestry of truth, laughter, love, and life. So, Father's Day. It is beautiful and complicated. For some, it's a card and a long hug. For others, an empty chair. For some, a man who tried his best. And for some, a father who never showed up at all. Today, we're not talking about perfect dads. We're talking about the father story that you carry, the one that shaped how you trust, how you love, how you choose, and the kind of man you keep ending up with. For every woman who has a father, misses a father, is still healing from one, or grew up wondering where he is, stay with us. So many of us experience fathers in different ways. And I'll kind of start where I think looking back, I remember other fathers and how they were or when they showed up and when they didn't. And when I was a child, I remember the first time my dad showed up for something for me at school was around second grade, second to third grade. And that's because he had an injury at work and broke his thumb. And so he was off work for 6 weeks during the healing. And he was there, right? Because my dad was a worker. He worked all the time. I think he worked like later shifts, sometimes third shift. So then during the day, it was always for me, Tasha, be quiet. Tasha, be quiet. Your dad's sleeping. And so I always had to like be quiet around my dad. And then, whenever he would get up type of thing, in the afternoon, then he was busy in his garage, right? So my dad was always building a car or doing something. So my experience is always like I know he wasn't absent, but I feel like he was because he would show up at different points, but it wasn't like I had him there every day for dinner. I was also in a lot of sports, so maybe that has something to do with it. But when you guys think about your younger selves, how do you think about the father that you had, not the one you wanted, but the one that you actually had at that point when you were a child versus maybe how your dad is today?
For me, we grew up very regimented. My dad's dad, my grandfather, on my dad's side, they had a business. So I know that they did not get to see my grandfather a lot. And I think that was a conscious decision that my dad made in being a teacher, that he will be there. And I know that Wednesday, so Mondays we had, certain food, Tuesday and then Wednesday, and we had tasks around the table. And I think that's why I still have a disdain for Wednesday, because Wednesday was pasta and I really disliked the pasta. But sorry, totally off the point. But
Was that your dad driving that?
I'm not sure. I think it might have been my mom.
Oh.
Yeah. But we lived right opposite the school, literally opposite the school. And the bell would, I'm trying to think who did it. Was it because we had a maid growing up, and she would ring the bell, and then we would have to come off the sports field, and then we would come eat. And I think it was really early, like 5:45. That was dinner, cooked. So, and my dad was there, and we would open with prayer. We would end with prayer. And my dad would read something from the Bible. And so it was very regimented in that way. So I think I was blessed that I had that. I did not give that to my family because my life changed. I moved to the States. But he was definitely there. So he was a teacher. He did sports, and he was a coach. But I was really thankful that I had him there. I'm sure sometimes I would have like, "Dad, don't you have to go do something else?" But he was there. He was a there dad.
Yeah, and
That was
I will
good.
say, like, my dad would take me to the junkyard. We'd go find car parts and take them off of other cars.
That's
And
awesome.
I do recall he he had his garage with all of his tools and his
Yeah.
tool benches, but he built me my own tool bench. So I did. I mean,
That's
yes.
amazing. That's
And
how
so
he loved
he
you.
did. Yes. And I look back and
Oh,
his love wasn't saying I love you, because he
Yeah.
didn't say that. He still
Yeah.
doesn't say that. It was fixing something that was broken,
I love
or,
that.
giving me, like when I got my first car, right? Giving me a car that was a great Buick, right? You got to love the Buicks. But it was those types of ways of showing versus like
Mhm.
maybe saying it. Did your parents say I love you? Or your dad, did he
Oh,
say I love you?
He does now. He didn't always. It was not something I think he grew up with. But we started because I moved away when I was 23, and we made more of a point saying that. But he does it now. Absolutely every call, because we don't know, how many phone calls do we have,
Mhm.
how many more visits we have. But it was not typical of them. I don't think his dad ever said it to him. So
Yeah.
I think, as we're growing older, we have more grace and mercy for them, because they didn't have a blueprint just like we didn't.
Mhm.
Mhm.
But I can see where he is now, 90, and I just saw them recently. He is loving. He is loving, but in his way,
Mhm.
not my way.
Yeah.
Yes.
What about your dad? Did he say I love you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, he was the love of my life,
Oh,
and I'm just sitting back because I'm much older. But do you remember the car seats you hung over the front seat, looking forward with the little steering wheel with the beep beep and the horn?
I
You ever see them?
don't know. That's a
The
generational
It was
thing.
a car seat for a kid.
Oh,
Oh, that's
yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
cute.
remember the
Like a
old car,
baby
but
one?
but that's
is
what
that
I
what?
had.
Oh,
That's what
okay.
I was in. And I remember I've been told forever, my first sentence I ever said, I could see my dad in the rearview mirror.
Oh,
And I'd go, yep, that's my daddy.
oh, that's
First sentence.
beautiful.
I mean, he could do no wrong. And even though
Yeah.
he was not that perfect a man, but he was,
Wait.
in my eyes, he could do no
Yeah,
wrong.
That's
that makes me
awesome.
laugh because I remember the one time um my son's dad had done something and my dad came over, and was looking at the work, because my dad's a pretty good handyman. I mean, when I was younger, I mean, I still like he can pretty much do anything. He can sew, he can build a
Oh,
car, he
wow.
can build a house. Like he built our house that I grew up in. So he's one of those like just does everything.
Yeah.
Okay, really quick. Over 7,000 people watch Generations Woven every month, but only a tiny percentage of you are actually subscribed. If you've ever watched an episode and thought, wow, I needed that, please hit subscribe. It's free and it takes 2 seconds, and it genuinely helps us grow, bring on amazing guests, and reach more women looking for connection, healing, and real conversations. Thank you. But he came over and he looked at something and he says to my son's dad, "You almost cut that too short." And my my son's dad goes, "Well, that means it's perfect, right?" Oh, and my dad said nothing. He just did see, but it was good because I was like,
Yeah.
because it was, you almost cut it too short, meaning you must have cut it just right.
Right.
That's
So
true.
that's perfect. But my dad couldn't even accept that. He's a tough one to please in
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah.
That's hard when you have a dad that does certain things the way you like it, and then you start dating. I actually
Yeah.
I had this conversation with my younger sister, and she we're talking about the traits that we're looking for then, because we like it in our dads. And she mentioned that her first love of her life um, wasn't very mechanically inclined at all. And she goes, yeah, and that's why I didn't marry him, because my dad was. And the one she did, just a shout out to my brother-in-law, Dick. He's wonderful and very smart and very mechanically inclined. So, but I think that that is something that all three of us, all three sisters, if you're not mechanically inclined, sorry, you're not going to make it. You're just
Well,
not going to make
the
it.
way you said like the first love of her life. So, right,
Yeah.
so that was like a romantic relationship
Yes.
versus
That was a boyfriend. It wasn't first, you're right. First love of her life, of course, was my dad, all of ours. But when she started dating, and we like this guy, he's a doctor now, but that was still not enough. Um, we like the one she picked in the end. He's a good guy.
See, I don't think I'm at the point like you both kind of say that, like that your dad is the love of your life. And to me, I don't see that. I don't know.
Okay.
Let's just say it kind of sounds like weird to me.
It does sound weird, but he's the
Well, wait a
first
minute.
male figure.
My mother had 2 boys with her first husband, and he passed away. 24 years later, she's married to my dad, and he'd never had children.
Okay.
So I was his little princess. I
Oh,
sat on the
bet.
pedestal. I mean,
You were everything.
I was everything, yeah. And he adored me, and it was quite mutual.
What I would say, maybe rather than the love of my life, my dad was my hero,
Aw,
and he still is. And again, it doesn't mean that he's perfect, but all the traits that are important to me today, like integrity, work ethic, um, he is actually quite creative, um, loves and adores my mom. They've been married 66 years.
wow.
And that means a lot.
Mhm.
So yeah, I'm very fond of him.
So, do you think your dad was the blueprint for a relationship for you?
Yes. And the problem was that I was looking for somebody like that. And that's unfair because there's only one of him. And the bar was very, very high. And that's why I've been married more than once. Um, and even the person that I was dating last time, we were talking about him. Um, I know that he felt that he needed to live up to that standard. And he said to me, I can't. And I'm like, that is actually unfair
Mm-hmm.
because he has other characteristics that are amazing, phenomenal business person, amazing salesperson. So yes, it's I think it's hard for daughters because we look at our dads and we are the little princesses to some extent, but that's our dads.
Sort of, it was a disadvantage for me because even though he was sober while I was growing up, he was a horrible alcoholic when he was younger, and he hadn't had a drink for years. But if you've ever dealt with any of the alcohol programs, you know that there's certain behaviors and dynamics in the family that don't necessarily go away just because they stop drinking.
Mm,
And so what I looked for in a man wasn't necessarily a healthy thing to look for.
yeah.
Because my father was an exciting man. He was,
Fun.
fun. Yes,
Yeah.
he was.
Was he a
And
bad boy?
not according to your guys'
Well,
definition, but
well,
you know
we
what I
do have a
mean.
different definition of bad
Yeah,
boy.
the bad
Yeah.
boys do not pay for lunch and smart meals and
No, he liked to have fun, but I think it sort of affected what I was looking for.
mm,
He was not he was a good man. He was kind to people, very smart. He was a designer. He actually designed the uh, barbed wire machine that they used at Northwestern Steel and Wire.
oh my goodness.
Wow.
That kind of. I mean, he was very smart. He didn't
Yes.
finish high school.
Yeah.
He got his GED and went into drafting and all that sort of thing. But he was an inventor,
Mm,
and
amazing.
he and the next door neighbor, my best friend's dad, he and him invented, and of course didn't patent it, the original snowmobile, like back in late
Wow.
20s or early 30s.
Wow.
Yeah,
Phenomenal.
but they were riding the snowmobiles on the on the canal
Judy,
banks. Yeah,
that's
Yeah,
amazing.
that's really neat.
so he was a very very interesting man,
Mm,
and but I think it affected my ability to pick someone that's extremely healthy.
mm,
Mm.
mm,
So we learn, we
So,
go through life, and
is there anything that so when we talk about forgiving our dads,
mm.
I think in my perspective, I think you don't have to forgive them by telling them. I think you have to just accept something, right? To yourself, like accepting that I forgive him for whatever. Is there anything that you guys feel you had to forgive your dad for, and did you tell them, or is that just more of your own forgiveness?
So I told you that in our family, we don't have a problem with confrontation whatsoever. So no, I confronted my dad on the things that I felt I needed to share with him. And he was very gracious and he listened to it and he asked if he could, respond back. And he did. So I feel like the things that didn't work for me, um, we handled those. And that is just, what we do.
That's not a lot of families don't do
No.
that.
No.
I
And
couldn't even imagine confronting my dad on the things that I've felt. I've just had to like let them go myself.
yeah, and I think I just came off of a training too where they were talking about that and let it go because you're the one holding on to that
Mhm.
stuff.
Yeah.
And I was really glad, and I know my older sister too, but we all handle things differently. And I think I might have shared this with you guys before. When I was around 2021, I went to my dad one time and I say to him, "Well, Dad, I think you did a really poor job with me." Um, and
Wow.
my dad just looked at me and graciously, he just probably took a breath and he said, "Okay, I'll accept that. But one day you're going to stand in front of God and you're going to say, in spite of the fact that I had such a poor dad and did whatever he didn't do, what did I do with the rest of my life?" And I'm like,
Mm,
Whoa.
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Because you
So,
can sit and blame other
oh,
people, whether it be your mom, your
absolutely.
dad, and say, oh, I'm stuck living in this town
It's
because of my
your
parents,
fault.
or
Yeah.
I have, this problems
Yeah.
because of my parent. And I think we've talked about that a little bit too, is that's okay. Well, that was your parent. You are now
Yes.
an adult.
Yes.
Even as soon as you're out of the nest, it's now up to you to
Yeah.
make those
It's
changes. And
your
you don't
life.
have to.
How many? I see 50 and 60-year-old women still blaming their folks for
Yes.
how they turned out.
You're
When is
absolutely
it
right.
time to put on the big girl panties?
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
come on,
But
it's their life.
I think
Yeah.
people have a vested interest because it becomes part of their personality. See, poor
Mm,
me.
Yeah,
Okay, ma'am, that was how many years ago? And you're still using that
yeah.
as an excuse. That's the one
mm-hmm.
thing. It's a saying, my dad, and he said it often. He said, "You are the architect of your own life." And I love that.
I
I
love
love
that.
It
that
is.
because we don't always talk enough about free will. We do have free will. And if we do have free will, we can't always say, "Well, it's your it's your fault." We're talking
Mm-hmm.
about your fault. But I think it's
Yeah.
so I grew up with a strong dad, definitely strong. My boyfriends were scared of my dad, I can tell you that. Um, but what is endearing to me is my dad's faith. The first time I saw my dad on his knees praying,
Mm,
man, and visiting now, seeing him spending time in the word and the wisdom he has. I don't think he had that, growing up, but I know I'm not the same child I was, what, 10
no.
years ago,
Mm-hmm.
15 years ago,
5 years ago.
5 years ago, 2 years ago.
Yeah, 6 months ago, right? Have you ever seen your dad cry?
Yes. No, let me take it back. I've heard because I wasn't at the funeral, but when his dad passed away, apparently that was the
I don't
but
remember my dad. I mean, I've seen him a little emotional, but
yeah.
never shed a tear.
No, men don't cry. We come
Yeah.
from that generation, men don't cry, which I think is so unfair.
Something I just want to bring up, how we tend to blame someone else or our parents or
Yeah.
whatever. Something that brings a reality is we've got to remember this isn't a dress rehearsal. This is our lives.
Yeah.
And so
True.
when we make decisions, we need to make them count,
Yes.
make the best ones we can, not just react to situations and roll with whatever, but consciously make decisions for your best.
Mm.
And remember, it's not a dress rehearsal.
Yeah, this is all
This
we got.
this is it.
This week, write down one sentence. The father story I carry is. What do you want to keep? What do you want to rewrite? Comment in this video right now. Tell us about him. The good, the hard, the missing. We're reading every single one. Until next time, God bless.
There's an invisible thread that ties us all through the rises, through the falls. We are stronger when we stand as one, together shining like the sun. Generations woven hand in hand, building hope across the land.